So, oh my god. I really thought about quitting this week. I really don't like the unlawful detainments. It's not a very fun time, you know? I'm somewhere between running for Congress and quitting. Somewhere between there, to be honest. Um, I don't know. We're in the same position right now if you watch any documentary about like World War II, where the liberals are sitting around. They're sitting around hoping everything collapses. Not in a bad way, but obviously they hope the chaos of the administration causes it to fail in doing bad things. You know, not collapsing in a good way, but collapsing so they cannot do bad things. But with Palestine, Israel, for example, and obviously we had this story come out today where someone got detained, a green card holder who has a pregnant wife, 8 months pregnant. She's a U.S. citizen, but he's a permanent resident. And ICE agents came and said they were acting on behalf of the State Department to revoke his visa first. And then after learning he has a green card, they said, oh, we're actually here to revoke your green card instead. And that's really scary because at that point, we're like 70% to people who just disagree with the government getting thrown into a van and shipped off somewhere. They gave no reason for arrest. They gave no reason for detainment or holding. They had no warrant. They did not provide any information on whereabouts to the family. They threatened to arrest the 8 months pregnant wife as well. And today we did not hear much about it other than what was reported. And then Marco Rubio, and obviously like green card, even under the Lake and Riley Act, which takes away due process, that takes away due process from illegal immigrants or undocumented people who are not here permanently. That does not touch this. So for a green card holder, they still have right to a trial, right to actually know why they're being detained, all that kind of stuff. And already, even if they did produce evidence after this, if the story is true at all, they already violated pretty much every amendment in the Bill of Rights. And then, well, that happened earlier. Let's see. Marco Rubio also put up a post saying, "We will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported." Now, you would have to actually establish that this person is supporting a organization on behalf of terroristic activity. They have a plan for either violence, or they are showing extreme support, or sharing intelligence, or something. And I don't know, maybe this person says something about Hamas, but as far as what I've seen, nothing would fall under a First Amendment, to not be protected by the First Amendment. Everything that he's done, as far as I can find, should be covered under First Amendment. And even if it was not, random federal agents bursting into your university housing with no cause or reason given for your arrest is still bad regardless, obviously. So university-owned residence Saturday night. And this person did play a prominent role in protest against Israel at Columbia University. And Columbia is one of the most, I'd say, fiery campuses for protests and encampments. They've had a lot of legal issues over the years, past few years. Probably the most prominent in the news, I'd have to say, the most prominent in the news. So they were a part of encampments or the negotiations with the school about divesting from Israel, which my position's on that. I'm against what's happening right now. I don't have any strong opinions about divesting. I don't think that's exactly the key point right now, but I mean that is where students on these campuses feel they can most effectively tackle the issue from their perspective. But I mean, there's more than enough humanitarian concerns, especially with the U.S. Supporting Israel withholding aid, Israel shutting off electricity, and it's so weird how this is unfolding. Trump, the U.S. envoy, spoke with Hamas without telling Israel today, and then they said on the news that Hamas, they're not like these evil, what did they say on the news today? Hamas Trump envoy. It's just a really weird overall situation.
Exchanging all prisoners.
And why Netanyahu, Dermer, others might be upset.
I do understand. I spoke with Ron, and I'm sympathetic. He has someone that he doesn't know well, making direct contact with Hamas. Maybe I would see them and say, look, they don't have horns growing out of their head. They're actually guys like us. They're pretty nice guys. So he doesn't know me, and there are big stakes. He lives in a country where if it sets certain precedents, then it will hurt or help a lot of other people. So I understand the consternation and the...
So really interesting. He's obviously defending his position as someone in the U.S. hostage envoy for why Israel might be offended that they spoke with Hamas for the first time, I think, directly in negotiations. And right now, for anti-Semitism, I'd say by far it's coming from the right wing. From the Joe Rogan podcast, that Ian guy, Ian Carroll, he's a big grifter making money off this. Candace Owens on Theo Vaughn, and friggin' Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith calls her a brilliant person. Said she's not going anywhere anytime soon. The anti-Semitic media I've seen from the right wing has far surpassed every single college movement. In the worst examples by far. Like the media has been insane for being with the anti-Semitism in media. Look at Ben Shapiro's comment section, and he's a right-wing pundit. Let's see. So they said before, the university's allegations against Khalil focused on his involvement in the Columbia University apartheid divest group. That's what I mentioned before about divesting from Israel. He faced sanctions for potentially helping to organize unauthorized marching event in which participants glorified Hamas's October 7th attack and played a substantial role in the circulation of social media posts criticizing Zionism. Glorified. I wonder what this is. Unauthorized marching event in which participants glorified October 7th. What do you think that is? Let me see. On Columbia campus. Does anyone know what the story is? I'm not really sure what this exact story is, but regardless, I've had 13 allegations around me, Khalil said. Most of them are social media posts I had nothing to do with. I just wanted to show Congress and right-wing pundits what they're doing. Right-wing pundits what they're doing, or that they're doing something regardless of the stakes of the stakes for students. It's mainly an office to chill pro-Palestine speech. He accuses this new Columbia University office that brought disciplinary charges against students for their pro-Palestine activism, saying it's to chill freedom of speech. Let me see, glorified. Regardless, even if this did happen, it would not justify detaining someone and all the other rights they violated. But yeah, it's not good. And this is one of those things where they test the waters, basically, to see if the American people will put up with something like this, a blatant infringement on rights. And the big thing is, for anyone from any perspective, you should not be okay with this, whether you agree or disagree, whether you like the person, you don't like the person, whether you agree with their cause, don't agree with the cause. To have a principled free society, you need to make sure you have these standards and rights upheld, regardless. Whether you know, that's the point of America, is whether you agree, or any free country, whether you agree with it or disagree, these rights shall be maintained and upheld. And if they will take those rights away from others, and Americans don't stand up in some way, then they will take those rights away from you if they get the chance, with no checks and balances on their power. But I mean, obviously, we're going to see where it goes from here. They violated enough rights. We'll see if they give a trial. If they really just take him and take this permanent resident, green card holder, who has the 8-month pregnant wife, if they really take him and deport him with no trial, then it's like, okay, you know, we're there with the authoritarianism. We're 90% there to political prisoners being targeted in America just for disagreeing, not owning immigration or green cards or whatever. Patrick said, the right is calling all sides out. Right is the party of common sense. Yeah, dude. They are the right of common sense. I mean, they're the party of common sense in a sense that they cannot make any arguments, so they need to call themselves the party of common sense instead of making the argument. If you need to say you're the party of common sense, instead of actually providing why you have common sense, then you might not have common sense, okay? Just saying. Big point there. Big point there to recognize and understand about yourself. Make sure you drop a like on the stream. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. Why are there people crying in chat already? Oh. Yeah, interesting. Someone just called. If you want to call in, you can. I think someone did, if they want to call in again. But only people that disagree. I'm probably just going to react to videos or whatever. I'm tired. Nice. Why am I on top chat right now? I'm not. Well, Trump has been saying globalist a lot. That is true. Trump has been saying globalist very often. He's been saying the word globalist like way too much recently. Why is Trump saying globalists? That is crazy he's saying globalism. And I know Trump did not make up that word by himself. There you go. He's just a goofy guy. He's just a goofy guy, bro. It's all a matter of chance. He's just a goofy guy. Goofy guys say goofy things sometimes. Like, come on. Get real. Get real, liberals. It's not okay for goofy guys to say goofy things. Another plane crash happened today in Pennsylvania. Another small plane crashing in the middle of a, I believe, retirement home or something like that. So that's always a fun thing to talk about.
Call from
Jeffrey.
Hello?
Hi, yeah. I know a lot of people call in about Trump and what he wants to do, but the real questions are really about the paramour and his penis and who has the biggest one.
God bless America. Nice. Dude, they want me to quit already, dude. They want me to quit already, dude. They want me to quit already. Valiant effort, I will tell you. Did anyone see the Sam Seder on Jubilee? Make sure you drop a like on the stream. Get me in the algorithm. More callers. Anyone see Sam Seder on Jubilee today? Sam dominated every single person in Jubilee, but there's one particular person in the middle that would not let Sam respond. And I don't know how to beat that person in a debate because they come with their talking points. And if you approach them in good faith, if someone is going to approach you in bad faith and you approach them in good faith, there's a good chance they are going to beat you in that debate. Not from actually beating you by knowing more, but by, having better optics because they can hit all their talking points super quick. And the American people and viewers in general don't understand the nuance. So the person with having nuance right now is an enemy to your chances to win a conversation or to look better in a conversation or to win a debate. So I think that's the only time Sam actually yeah, I mean, most of them are very, very silly boys. So it's not very surprising if they had issues catching up to what was happening, but the one guy is a troll. It's got to be a troll. The guy who said there's tax cuts. He's probably running through different right-wing propaganda points to see what people would believe. What would people believe if I made it up right now? And one of them would be, okay, if we allow people to, oh God. Beautiful. Beautiful, dude. Wow. That's really something else. That's a really powerful message you got right there. Bernie did another oligarchy thing. He did another anti-oligarchy toll. Or oligarchy thingy rally. Who are the popular people nowadays on these websites? Well, Trump also, yeah.
Who this week?
President Putin disrespecting you by attacking Ukraine when you're trying to
Who?
make peace there? Is President Putin disrespecting you by attacking Ukraine when you're trying
Is Putin disrespecting you by attacking Ukraine?
to make peace there?
What did he do?
Well, he's
What did he do? What did he do?
attacking Ukraine.
Is he disrespecting me?
Yep.
Who are you with?
Is he disrespecting me? Who are you
I'm
with?
Michael Berg about the Washington Post.
You've lost a lot of credibility. Go ahead. What else?
You ask him one real question, he's like, bro, how dare you ask me that question? You're losing credibility right now. Your social credit score is going down. Learn how to speak Chinese, buddy. That's a meme, by the way, from the NBA. But anyways, regardless, yeah, it's funny how he does not answer any questions.
Are going to drive America better. Remember, we pay taxes into the Internal Revenue Service. Wouldn't it be amazing to stop paying taxes to the Internal Revenue Service and have the External Revenue Service?
By the way, when this guy says what he's about to say, he's saying you guys are all dumbasses and you're going to believe anything I say. When he says this, he knows it's stupid, but he also knows you're stupid. I don't want you to be stupid. I don't want you to believe this bullshit, but you do because you love the people in charge and you're like really emotionally connected to it. It's your identity. I understand it, but he's saying you're a dumbass.
Are going to drive America better. Remember,
Tariffs are going to drive America better, bro.
we pay taxes into the Internal Revenue Service. Wouldn't it be amazing to stop paying taxes to the Internal Revenue Service and have the External Revenue Service of Make America Great Again replace our taxes? That's the goal of Donald Trump, and I think he's going to hit there. He's going to do everything he can to make that happen.
He knows that makes zero sense at all. Tariffs are import taxes on the American people, okay? Tariffs are a regressive tax. It's a flat tax, essentially. And that means if you remove federal income tax or lower it for the top 1%, then poor people, working class people that need to buy more goods, okay? You have to buy more goods. You are going to take the brunt of that tax burden. In a progressive system, you make more money, you pay more taxes for federal income tax. But if we switch to more tariffs for an income base, they're essentially charging the American people to subsidize giving tax cuts to the huge corporations. But they say the word tariff, they say the External Revenue Service, bro. We're going to make the external, bro. The Internal Revenue Service is inside America. That's going to cost you money. External, it's outside America, bro. Hands off. Hands off. The External Revenue Service, you're not going to pay nothing into that, bro. You're not going to pay nothing. Double negative on purpose. You're not going to pay nothing because you're going to pay everything into it. It's an import tax on the American people and American businesses. The first time Trump did any tariffs at all, not even across the board, we actually lost manufacturing jobs because the input costs, and I know you guys fall apart, your brains start having, manufacturing issues when we talk about this because you overheat and you're like, the glue that holds your components together starts melting and you slowly devolve into an endless slime ball of like, and you have no idea what's happening. But the input costs from tariffs, because different devices, different products are made from, components that are made all around the world. So if you have a car made in America, there's some parts made maybe in Canada, maybe in Mexico, maybe somewhere else, some parts made in America, then the car can be completed in America. So even with that type of the process of making that item or that good is going to go through a different country lines. And you're going to have to pay tariffs every time it goes in America, out of America, etc. But the input costs, because of tariffs, actually caused our manufacturing jobs to decrease when Trump was president the first time, and that's what ends up ultimately happening. It's not good for anyone. They want to intentionally crash the economy so the interest rates go down, so the ultra rich can buy up all the small businesses. Okay, so the ultra rich can help cut down their own federal income tax. They're going to raise your taxes through tariffs. Call it the External Revenue Service, so you have a shiny object to look at, so you don't know what they're actually doing. And they're going to call you all stupid, and they know you're stupid, and they know you're going to fall for it because you're mad at liberals, and you're going to follow everything they say, even if they make zero coherent sense in any of their economic evaluations at all. The input cost for the businesses becomes too much. Small businesses will die. Small consumers will lose their housing. Okay, when they make the economy crash to get the interest rates lower, because that's what they want. Trump said today, he was bragging on Fox News, well, the interest rates have been low for 3 days, so that's pretty good. Meanwhile, consumer costs are going up even more. Housing costs are going up even more. Our housing market had the most defaults since on loans, on mortgages, since 2008. We're surpassing 2008 on both mortgages, defaulting, and car loans. Past 2008, a record amount of credit card debt in America right now. And Trump's talking about how good the economy is because of interest rates being low. Interest rates are low now, so it's good, Trump said. For 3 straight days. When asked about a recession, he said, well, maybe, but there's big things happening. We need to make sure we have big things to make America great again. Because you guys fall for the shiny object politics every single time. It's absolutely gross how incompetent. I don't even want to say that word because you get offended.
And the blow up the other day with Zelensky. Let me stay on the economy for a moment because there are rising worries about a slowdown. You've got the Atlanta Federal Reserve saying we're going to have a contraction in the first quarter. Look, I know that you inherited a mess, and you said that the other night.
I've only been here,
but
for a
are
while.
you expecting a
Okay, so number one, when you answer a question and you're Donald Trump, you have to cry, you have to complain, you have to really moan about things like, oh, Joe Biden messed everything up, although our economy by every available metric was growing fine before Trump took over. It was growing, top in the world before Trump took over. There's issues in every economy, but Trump took over at a pretty good point in our economic path, okay? And he is purposely destabilizing the markets with his tariffs, taking them on and off and on and off again, kicking tons of people out of their jobs. They want to privatize everything. They want to cut taxes for the ultra rich. They want to make interest rates lower so the rich can use that to leverage their new acquisitions. And Trump's going to be like, oh, well, everything's so hard to me. He covers all of that really purposeful work. So our owners that own America, our owners can reap the benefits. Because, they can reap the benefits because when you run the country like a business, the owner in a business makes the most money. The owners will, the panel of owners. So the owners requested that Trump does this on purpose so they can buy up more of the economy, so they can privatize everything that our federal government was doing, so they can keep our taxes the same while providing less services from the government. I want lower taxes if you're not going to fund federal national parks. I want lower taxes if you're not going to fund child trafficking units. If you're not going to fund veterans care, I want lower taxes at that point. I'll get taxed more if you provide services, but if you're going to cut services, I don't want to be taxed more to give tax cuts to the top 1%. I don't want that. I did not sign on to that. Congress, our representatives did not vote for that. But they're trying to. They want to cut Medicaid, cut Medicare, cut every program we actually benefit from. Don't tax us then. Don't do any federal tax anymore. Just let the states fund everything.
recession this year?
If you really want to.
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition.
I know it's quieter.
Because what we're doing is very big. We're
The
bringing
videos go
wealth
up and
back
down.
to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I think it should be great. It's going to be great ultimately for the farmer. Don't forget,
And I want to ask you about Ukraine and the blow up the other day.
Beautiful.
I hate to predict things like that.
I hate to predict things like that. Trump also said, I don't look at the market anymore. I really just don't look at the market. Why would I look at the market? Why would I ever look at that? It's not even a big deal. Trump really said that. Trump really said, why would you look at the market, bro?
There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I think it should be great. It's going to be great ultimately for the farmer. Don't forget,
And I want to ask you about
Thank you for $10, Jordan. Really appreciate it. JB Bad and Luke B are your biggest fans. They return to your streams, constantly talk and chat, and are very respectful. You think we could give them honorary memberships? At the very least, free soy? Thank you, Jordan, for the $10. Yes, we can give anyone free soy. We have so much. I could just, scream and cry, and my tears will be soy-filled, and I will give them my soy. As much as they may need, I will cry it out like a true liberal. Like a true liberal would. True liberals love soy. Oh yeah, this too. Dana White, call into the show, guys. If you want to call into the show. Let's talk politics. Dana White and Kash Patel and all these guys are best friends with Andrew Tate, and it's like, hey, bro, you got to just admit at this point they're hiding the Epstein files. They're supporting Andrew Tate. What are they really hiding? Well, what is MAGA here to do? Maybe they talk about trafficking so much because maybe they support it. Not the MAGA base. I know the voters don't. But it's really weird how much they talk about it, this guy and this guy. But then they welcome Andrew Tate with open arms. They don't talk about Epstein at all. They hide the actual Epstein files. They give you the stuff that was already exposed on the internet. I wish you would give all this conspiracy theory making power to everyone. You know, if you're going to be conspiracy theorists, make it about everyone. Don't just choose people you don't like. Make the conspiracy theory. You know, there's much more here out in the open. These guys love the Tates. They'll make excuses for it. They'll be like, hell yeah, I love that shit, bro. Do consistent conspiracies, okay? Do consistent conspiracies. I'm sick of seeing conspiracies that are completely fabricated. At least do something here, guys. You need credibility. You need bipartisan support for your conspiracies. You're not going to get it if you just make conspiracies about one political side. Like, come on, dude. There's more important things to do than worry about Epstein. Oh yeah, tell that to every single person that voted for Donald Trump, or most people that voted for Donald Trump. Jordan, another $10. Where are you doing all this money? Oh, $20. Big man. Big man. Thank you, big man. Jordan did $10. Big man did 20. Thank you, big man. Thank you, both of you. You are doing an outstanding job. Keep calling them out the lame. Oh, I don't call them that. That's. Ooh. Okay, I'll let you say that word. The M word. The M word. Lame incels. Thank you, big man. Thank you for watching and stuff. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's what the people said. Trump's like, we're going to release the JFK files. We're going to release the files about everything. Jeffrey Epstein, not so much. Nice. This is really cool, too. I did not get trafficked last night. Thank you for asking. Andrew Tate, yet. No. Crying emoji. I'm sorry I failed, Tristan Tate. It's hilarious. Yeah, if Epstein was a right-wing podcaster, he'd be free, bro. If Epstein was a right-wing podcaster, he'd be welcomed into the fold instantly. He'd be welcomed in. He would be given the full welcome, the full defense tour. I mean, Andrew Tate did blame his attackers being funded by George Soros. He said every investigation against him was funded by George Soros, which is hilarious. Everything is, apparently, in every country. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. George Soros gets good value for his dollar. I'm not going to lie. And how many things he can apparently influence globally. A very powerful person, indeed. Yeah.
Tonight, a Palestinian activist who helped lead the protest at Columbia University is in ICE custody. Mahmoud Khalil's attorney saying in a statement that he was wrongfully arrested by immigration agents, claiming his student visa was revoked, even though Mahmoud is a legal permanent resident and not in the U.S. on a student visa.
Trying to clarify this with the university.
Khalil was one of the few protesters who shared his name during the protests last year.
We want a divestment from the Israeli occupation.
In a statement, Columbia University acknowledging reports of ICE around campus. This reported
Patrick's Time said Soros bragged about giving Ukraine $5 billion in 2013 to 2014. I'm gonna die. Okay, so by every reasonable metric, George Soros is worth probably $4 or $5 billion. The idea that he can give $5 billion cash to anywhere is insane.
Call from
Howard.
How are you?
To accept, press 1. To send a...
Hello.
Hey, man. I like your podcast, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, it's called YouTube, man. YouTube show. There you go. YouTube show. TikTok. I'm a TikToker now.
Okay. What I want to know, several things I want to know. One, how do you become so informed? You must read a lot.
You have autism and ADHD, and you take Aderall.
What? Oh, you're talking about yourself. You're not talking about me.
No, I'm saying like in general. I have ADHD, not autism, but I do take Viance, which is not Aderall. But I mean, just being curious about everything that people say in general, and looking for understanding how to look through data and how to look through actual studies and like relatively trusted sources, and just having a bullshit detector. I usually say if someone needs to convince you they're telling the truth and convince you they have common sense, without actually showing truth or common sense, like the truth tellers and the freaking I'm just a common sense guy, common sense politician. Usually common sense people that do have common sense or truth will just show you and demonstrate how they have the truth or common sense versus just like trying to make you believe the shiny objects.
Yeah, it's like Trump telling us he's a genius. We know he's not a genius.
Yeah, he's probably a genius when it comes to evading crimes, but yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And I guess I have to give it to him. He is a great marketer on some level, although I wouldn't buy a Mercedes from him if he said it was only $200.
Now, these guys would be walking into the car dealership. They'd be like, all right, we got this 2005 Toyota Corolla, baby, $20,000, 50% APR. The best deal you can get anywhere, bro. I talked to the boss. I begged the boss for this deal. Like, you cannot find this anywhere else. You either buy this car right now or you walk out and we kill you. Like, that's how Trump kind of negotiates, and he kind of presents it in a really bad way, like a terrible deal in a really flashy way, and then he like acts like a big tough guy by saying something dumb to back it up. But yeah, it really is like really bad car dealer or like car salesman energy for sure.
Oh yeah, he's like the worst used car salesman ever. You can spot for. But what I don't understand is, and I don't know that many Trump supporters. I've only met one who would give it up to me when I said, well, what about him saying the one that can't be denied is him telling us to inject bleach? I mean, what about that? That should have been one of many things that sort of like people should have said, this guy is
He's
nuts.
a goofy guy. He's the most capable person to run America. He's the most capable person in American history to do anything, okay? He's the best, most like amazing person ever. And also, he has the self-control of a toddler. But we have to kind of like reconcile those two thoughts. He's like a toddler who's kind of dumb, but he's also the most impressive person to ever exist at the same time. It's amazing.
But what I don't understand is how people fall for him. I mean, how like half the country believes in this guy. That's what I don't get.
It's emotional. It's about identity. He does the opposite of like equality, identity politics. He does white identity politics and identitarianism. So it is like the opposite version of it. The Christian nationalism really appeals to the American audience, and we've talked about this for a long time in America. Ronald Reagan was kind of the first example of someone that could do this, like be super popular and do like terrible policies objectively. He was like a warning sign. And then like we had Bush, Obama, really boring politicians, and after that, the Electoral College and the way our government's structured let him win over Clinton by losing by 3 million votes. And still got to win somehow. And now the culture, they've been able to take over the media, and everyone believes their propaganda now. Especially like the 40-point drop on favorability towards Zelensky in the Republican Party in the span of a freaking week is insane. Like that's literal cult worship stuff.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you're around, man. Keep on keeping on. Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Have a good night, man.
All right, late.
All right, call in. If someone else is calling. It's a tired night. I'm tired. I'll check my phone too. See if anyone donated through Jolah Politics on any of those apps. I doubt it, but I do appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, donate money to Jolah Politics on Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo to really make me happy. It goes right to my account, and I get smile as I go to bed tonight. As I look at the money in my account, your $5 makes the world go round. Nice. Okay. We'll see if someone calls in. If not, then let's see. Aderall is not the same as Viance, and Viance is not the same as Aderall. It's the same drug when it's done, but it's a similar drug, but Viance is a pro-drug that needs to metabolize in your system before it actually works. It's much less addictive and much more effective. Hello.
Hey, Jolah.
Howdy, what's up?
Hey, first time seeing your show.
Hell yeah. Yeah, what do you wanna chat about?
Yeah, so I actually don't know much about you. Do you consider yourself a moderate, or do you pick a side?
I'm definitely on. I mean, in America, we have two parties that can reasonably win. I do support some independent candidates when they're able to win elections, for sure. But I also see it like as different factions within different parties. But I definitely would have to vote for Democrats over Republicans right now, for sure.
Yeah, so what are some of the topics you think the liberals have a strong hold on that makes them a better party?
I don't think liberals have a strong hold on topics. I think their approach to governing is much closer to the founding principles of America. I don't think they have strong messaging, which is why they lose. Their messaging does not work as well. Their propaganda does not work as well. They have terrible counter propaganda. But I mean, just in general, American Republicans and conservatives right now are very, 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 very far right on a global scale, closer to the conservative parties of Turkey and Russia. The liberals in America are closer to the centrists, or like very, very center left liberals in like Canada or the UK or any European or even Australia. So I mean, they talk about just basic healthcare reforms, basic regulations. Even after 2008, the financial crisis, in 2010, Democrats put on very basic regulations on Wall Street, and Republicans all voted against it. The most basic regulations. I don't think they went nearly hard enough on the big banks, but Democrats at least did something. So yeah, on issues like that, Democrats want higher taxes, not super high, but higher on the top 1% in corporations. And they actually wanted to raise the corporate tax rate and top 1% rate, and lower taxes for anyone making under $400,000. So all those policies supporting Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, Democrats want to protect that. Republicans want to get rid of it. So
interesting. So and maybe because I don't want to democratize too much of your time, pun intended, although I don't think that's a pun. Between the two topics, I'll give you a choice. What do you think is more interesting to discuss? DEI or Doge?
Well, Doge, I know for a fact is a completely fake movement just meant to privatize our government and to tear it apart. They're not like trying to cut out things surgically. They're trying to have a wrecking ball to everything. So that would just be an argument on if you want like no government, if you want like Argentina's system where you can basically just like, I don't know, pay for certain regulations for your company, or at least like exclusions from regulations or exemptions. So I mean, Doge is fake, but DEI is probably more interesting. I think DEI aligns with the founding views of America, and Republicans are showing that they are against the founding views of America by being super anti all DEI. So whatever one you want.
Okay, so yeah, so if you think DEI is more interesting, I think that's a cool one to start with. So I'll start with a rather controversial opinion. I'm curious what you think. I'll start with the sentiment DEI is racist.
The point of DEI from the very beginning, it includes accessibility, it includes veterans, it includes class, it includes like a white guy from rural America would get more chances based off DEI. So DEI and equal opportunity employment, that was the basis of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was making sure when you're hiring for a job, you see every available talent pool possible. But people often confuse that with quotas or affirmative action, which you can talk about those as anti-racist mechanisms. The right would call it reverse racism, but you could say anti-racist, reverse racist, and you could argue reverse racism could be good to, like, I don't know, after slavery, to make things more even, because black people were considered to not be humans under law, and then there were Jim Crow laws, etc., redlining, whatever you could bring up, even after the Civil Rights Movement was passed in the 60s. But yeah, so DEI being racist, no, like, if anything, DEI opens up employment opportunities to more people. It makes things more equal. Yeah, policies that people are mad about are like done by individual corporations and individual nonprofits, not really the federal government, and they never really were done by the federal government.
Interesting. So here's my perspective on it. I'm curious what you think. Let's say you're a person of color and you find out that you got the job. And I think this is where you may be making a very interesting case, which is around quotas, and that being not the intended purpose of DEI. So I agree with DEI at the level of making sure that your candidate pool is diverse. But in practice, I've seen it not work that way. So imagine you're a person of color and you find out you got the job not because you were the most qualified candidate, but because of the color of your skin. Doesn't that kind of hurt?
If someone literally said you are worthless and you can't do this job and you're only here because you're a diversity hire, then yeah, of course. But I mean, in practice, it'd be really hard to. That's what you're saying when you say that, though, because the idea would be like, for example, if I have like 100 white people working here, and I'm like, holy shit, there's like equal candidates left. I have 100 white people working here. I have not looked at any other communities at all, and there's an equally qualified black person. Maybe I should be hiring like, you know, this equally qualified black person. I want more perspectives for my company, and companies that have more perspectives can withstand I don't know, economic downturns or like cultural issues better because you have more diversity, you have more opinions that can help make your organization stronger and your organization's culture stronger. That'd be the debate more so. It would not be like, oh, we're going to take the least talented black person possible. We need them because they're going to equal our like diversity quotas. If anything, it's saying all these candidates are qualified. There's so many qualified candidates, and it'd be helpful to not have a company that's 100% like one like demographic.
No, completely agree. But in practice, at least what I've seen happen is the candidate that's less qualified.
For like what examples do you have for this?
So mostly in the tech industry, what we're seeing right now is sort of a backlash against conservatism, and so what you'll find is that when applications happen, we're actually being mandated to hire people of color regardless of anything else. So we're not actually looking to diversify our actual candidate pool of interview candidates, but our actual hiring. And so while I do agree, of course, if you have two candidates who are both equally qualified, that is a tricky situation in and of itself. But using someone's skin color as a deciding factor, or especially to award an unequal fair advantage, doesn't seem right, especially to that candidate who might have found a place where they were the most qualified candidate, but instead finds out actually they weren't hired because they were the most qualified. They were hired because of the color of their skin, and that's why I argue it's racist.
Well, that could be your opinion for one individual company. So, I mean, I can't like argue against one company doing something they deem to be pro their business model or whatever it might be. But what Trump is doing right now at the federal level is removing protections that were done during the civil rights movement because of trying to protect different classes, economically different demographics in general, whether that be skin color, gender, sexuality, whether you're a veteran, whether you need accessibility accommodations. So like that law is saying that if you are someone who got denied from a job, and it's like, okay, this person found out you're gay, now you're fired because they did not know you were gay when you were hired. Now you have legal routes you can take to hold that employer accountable if they do it for that reason. But like when you remove those DEI protections at the federal level and you make DEI a banned word, which is also, I think, really bad for freedom of speech. The White House has like 200 words that are like diversity, inclusion, equality that you cannot say in the federal government or you get fired, which is insane. What you just mentioned right there has nothing to do at all with federal law. Even without the DEI law, there are still companies, even after Trump is rolling these back, there's still companies and their boards are voting to maintain diversity practices because it does provide benefits. It benefits your company to be able to diversify your customer base, to diversify your talent pool, to diversify in a ton of different ways. Is really beneficial for a company. But yeah, what Trump is doing right now is removing the possibility for people who are truly discriminated against to have any legal recourse.
That's interesting. I would support being on your side if that's actually the case, that they're making it illegal to use certain terms like diversity.
Well, legally at the federal level, this is 100% what the case is, because the stuff you're complaining about would be done maybe for a couple nonprofits or a couple companies, like a very, very small minority of companies where they're having like legit quotas. But even if so, it's within the company's right to say like, hey, we want to diversify this pool. Here's our target numbers, and we're going to find qualified candidates in each of these pools. And you're saying like this is the unintended impact of DEI, but you can have none of these laws on the book and still have that happen, like I was saying. But the issue is like, now, and like the idea that we had a huge pushback that's substantial. I know people bring up a thing from like 2020 or 2021 with a bunch of like hires for these Fortune 500 companies being not white, not straight men or not men or whatever. Whatever it might be, even after that, I'm pretty sure like 70% of like 70 or 80% of management for Fortune 500 companies is still straight white guys. 95% of CEOs are still straight white guys. So it's not like anything really changed with the power structures. If anything, they just hired more people. But that's within the right as companies to, if they want to try and do fake corrections when it comes to discrimination, then sure. But when they hire these consultants and they hire people and they do it on the basis of their skin color, that company's trying to cover up their actual discriminatory policies by just saying, hey, we hired black guys, so we hired black people, or we hired whatever group, so like we can't be racist or sexist or we can't be homophobic because we hired them. They're using them as a shield And that has nothing to do, like I said, with what Trump is doing now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Would you like to discuss another topic, or would you like to move on to another caller?
I guess I'll just ask one question. Can you identify one piece of fraud or abuse that Doge has identified?
Overhiring of federal workers against our tax dollars.
You're saying it's fraud and abuse to overhire federal workers. How are you overhiring federal workers?
So if you take the number of federal workers that we have in the federal government and make the case that if you were to cut 25% of them, that the government would cease to operate effectively, I think we would think that would not be the case, meaning we can agree that the larger the government, the smaller the citizen, and our tax dollars.
No, I don't agree with that.
You don't think the larger the government, the smaller the citizen?
No, I want a really big government to protect people. I want a really big government to protect speech and to protect people from being screwed over by big banks and big companies. I want a really big government to protect our freedoms, for sure. I want a small government to restrict our freedoms. That's what our founding fathers also believed in. So if we have a huge growing tech industry that scans our information and steals it, then the government should definitely become big in that area to make sure we elect people who are going to appoint people who are going to protect Americans' information, like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau can help protect Americans from being screwed over by big companies. I think that's good. That's good for the government to be bigger. But I would say also, just really quick, our federal employment numbers right now are I think 500,000 total employment less than what we had in 1990. So the federal government has been shrinking pretty much since 1990. And we have a much bigger country today, a much more complicated country today, but our government has been shrinking. So the idea that we have too much employment in the federal government or whatever, what Doge just said about that is complete just like farce.
I think there's a difference between size and efficiency. So when you look at what Doge actually is, as far as I understand it, is actually more of a technology organization, right? It's spawned out of the actual digital services organization. And so when you look at the way that
they're
these systems
shutting down government buildings, right? They're shutting down government agencies like USAID and CFPB. So
yeah, I think efficiency is very different than just raw ability. So I do agree that the government needs to have an ability to act on the things you discussed, but I don't think it needs to do so at its operating size. Our deficit is out of control. We're at a certain point now where we're unable to maintain a balanced budget, and that's going to hurt
I'm sorry,
everyone.
but federal employment is not going to help with this. Federal employment and cutting employees is not going to help. In fact, we're losing revenue in a lot of these areas with our parks, with like cutting IRS agents. Most of the agents that were cut from the IRS went after like wealthy people. They're the people that were tasked to go after really wealthy people that have offshore accounts and who hide their money from the government. So we're losing money by cutting IRS agents, like what they're doing right now. And we actually we're actually having a higher spending output this year than we had in 2023 and 2024, according to our Treasury, which I'm sure they're going to get that graph blocked now. It's on the Treasury website. But what you just said, like employment with the federal government is not like an issue with spending at all. And they're like the Republican. If you look at the Republican budget they're passing, they want to increase the deficit by $2 trillion per year for the next 10 years. So like I don't know where those Doge cuts are.
So I think it's interesting. I think focusing on just employee headcount alone is not looking at the multiplicative effect of large-scale government. And so for every employee that you have, that employee is then using a certain amount of available funds. And that leads to just gross misabuse of our tax dollars.
Can you name one example? Can you name one example of fraud or abuse, though? Because what you said before is not fraud or abuse, and they said they found fraud and abuse. Like, can you name one example where the government is not using, the executive branch is not using their money according to what Congress has allocated?
Sure, I would say we could start with probably just we could start with USAID or even the Department of Education.
So, like USAID. A vast majority of their funding goes towards...
And we actually shouldn't call it USAID, USAID. A little bit different.
Well, sure, USAID, it still goes towards a lot of humanitarian work, but it does keep trade routes open. It's a way that the U.S. does soft power, which is a lot better than hard power. And I mean, people bring up like a gay parade somewhere. You can object to how money is being spent or allocated for these purposes of soft power, but you wouldn't just like bypass the Constitution and kill the entire USAID office. You would make arguments for that. You would either revise the bill in Congress, or you would go off the existing law, and allocate funding in a different way. You would not just like say, hey, by the way, we're killing this department. We're going to cut off all access to workers who are overseas currently and put them in dangerous positions. Like what they're doing right now makes zero sense at all with that.
You know, I look at it sort of as if you have a business, in this case the government being a sort of business, and you see the amount of money that they have and their inability to show proper accounting for that, that in and of itself is abuse and fraud.
Wait, what's
they're
not
taking
proper
money.
accounting? What's not proper accounted? Like what was not properly accounted for with the USAID that Doge found?
Well, you know, it's an interesting way to look at the sort of debate because it requires a sort of level of research that I'm not prepared for it at
I mean,
hand.
you're comparing it to a business too. Like the federal government should not be a business. I mean, the founding fathers knew that we had to have the government be a contradiction to business. It was not there to make money. It was there to provide human rights because we know from China today, we know from slavery, we know from Russia today, we know from all these countries that sometimes the efficiency and human rights collide. Slave labor is very efficient. So the government should not be just there for efficiency purposes. But I will say, when it comes to the strength of the U.S. dollar, good regulations that give people trust in the U.S. dollar is really good for the market. It's really good for Americans, for the dollar to be strong. It's good for regulations to make sense, to be enforced. So all these different things can add to the stability of the U.S. dollar. And I just want to say, like, comparing the U.S. to a business is probably the most dysfunctional way to look at government in general. I mean, even by our basic like founding principles.
Yeah, so you know, there's two ways that we could approach this going forward. So one is sort of, I think, my blanket statement that I think the size of government has gotten out of hand and the amount of funds that these agencies have is unnecessary given the fact that, look, if we were in an excess where we had additional funds like we did back in the 70s where we had all of this extra money, I would say that we should have a larger government and do more to help other countries. But I think when we can prove at least that we're sending billions of dollars to other countries when we clearly have things at home that we need to take care of, that to me is similar to abuse and fraud. It's abuse and fraud of our tax dollars because no one voted to say that we wanted all of this money to go to where it does. And I suppose to some extent you have...
Yeah, we did.
So there's another way that we could look at this, though. So you asked, like, are there examples of, you know, Doge findings? And to which you could start going down the list, right? So that's not hard, right? So I can just, like, go and I can pull up, like, pandemic, unemployment, insurance fraud, Medicare, Medicaid, improper payments, Pentagon, procurement abuse, Social Security overpayments, SNAP welfare fraud, DHS contract
but I want like actual examples of these things. Like you have to show substantial like examples of these things, and then you need to say that these rates of fraud are higher than private insurance. And I already know Social Security, the rates of Social Security fraud is much lower than any fraud found in any private industry anywhere for any type of insurance for anything. So you have to prove like this is how the government's being less efficient than like a big business. And Medicaid fraud, for example, and ask Florida Governor Senator Rick Scott for this information. Medicaid fraud comes from the big businesses exploiting the payment processing programs and those systems. Like Rick Scott defrauded Medicaid, and now he wants to cut Medicaid. So it's hilarious to see him like in charge of making policy for this now. But everything you just said, like I said, you know, it's not fraud and abuse just to say you don't like something or you want something to be more clear. This stuff is like examined on our federal budget websites. We have offices that we have investigators general who make reports on waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, the reason they say the Pentagon has failed every audit is because they do get audited. All these agencies get audited. These reports are here. But Musk and Trump fired all the people that do the real audits, largely because, in my opinion, because these different organizations are researching or investigating Elon Musk and a lot of Trump's donors. So the investigators that do this fraud work are simply, they got to be kicked out because they're going to go against Trump's political allies. And, Congress and Mike Johnson, all these assholes are acting like they don't know what's happening with federal funding. It's like, oh, we don't have time to look at this. Like, yes, you do. You pass every budget. You've been looking at this for years and years. You have 1 million staff working for you. You have people writing these reports. You've seen this all already. But they're acting like it's a new thing because, like, Musk is sort of like giving it a new hip rebrand. But they want to cut, like, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and all that kind of stuff. So you could be. Are you for cutting those programs?
So I think it's sort of an interesting lens where I could flip the question. And by the way, I appreciate the intellectual discourse on this. I actually don't have strong opinions on this. I'm mostly just trying to explore the ideas. So the way that I would flip it is to say that I think the idea of having a Department of Government Efficiency, and I'm aware that it's a rebrand of an existing organization, but the idea of putting a spotlight on it attempting to get more people looking at it and get the conversation more in the public forefront, which has happened, is causing there to be a microscope on the way that our tax dollars are being spent. Now, there's a fair argument that you're making that a lot of these cuts are not necessarily good cuts, but I think we can say at a bare minimum, if they find some additional funds or draw an additional spotlight to what's going on, that's a good thing. I don't see anything negative that can come from hiring, a group of 100 people and putting a public spotlight on the way that our tax dollars are being spent, even if they find some level of fraud and abuse, and we can go down one by one and say, this is true, this is not true, this is true, this is not true. That's a positive thing that's coming out of this administration that we have not seen an offering of from any of our recent parties in a long time.
But they're not really, like, when they pass a budget bill that includes a $2 trillion deficit per year, $20 trillion over the next 10 years, and they're cutting a lot of government programs to fund huge tax cuts for, mostly wealthy people. It just seems a little bit weird they're not following any of that. And I would say that, like, these reports have always been out there. Most of what Doge has quote unquote reported, most of what they have quote unquote reported has already been available on usspending.gov. They literally have been posting screenshots from that website. They've had to rewrite multiple contracts. They claimed they cut one contract from 2005 and counted that as a reduction in spending when it actually was not. They made a bunch of, like, wild claims, pointing people towards different things that do not exist in general. And, like, when it comes to the federal government, having the richest person of all time who takes defense contracts from the government, billions and billions and billions of dollars, huge conflicts of interest, having him go in these agencies, install private servers. We know Musk has, relationships with the Communist Party of China, very big relationship to the point where Tesla has reaffirmed their socialist values multiple times. I just don't like the idea that this one person can go through and kill these departments. And there's also, Congress is choosing to not use their checks and balances right now because Republicans are controlling it and sort of like letting this happen. But them just killing these agencies is unconstitutional, like super unconstitutional, to just, like, not allocate this money. And that's why even the Supreme Court, and I mean, it was close, but even, up and down the federal courts, whether it's a Bush appointee or a Reagan appointee, etc., these different judges all agree, like, this is the Constitution still. If you want to change these things, that's why we have Congress pass a law. You don't just go through with like a random executive department to cut every government agency and cut all the investigators and cut every single person involved, because that could be prone to authoritarianism and a conflict of interest. You want these things really dissected in Congress, which they should be doing in budgets. But in the actual budget they release, like, why do you like, when you see Republicans release a budget that adds an extra $2 trillion onto the deficit per year, what do you think when their actual budget framework includes none of the, the only cuts they included were to Medicaid, essentially, by for $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid. Like, are they just not adding the Doge cuts, or what do you think they're doing there?
No, it's interesting. I don't think either party over the last, at least for as long as I've followed politics, I think I've seen either the Democrats nor the Republicans propose any sort of strategy that doesn't result in additional deficit. So I think that's just a sort of strike against both parties and a failure of our politicians to prioritize.
Kamala's policies would have added, I think, 1/4 of the debt that Trump's will. So, I mean, they do add debt, but Democrats add it for infrastructure plans and manufacturing subsidies, and, like, plans that go into the American economy, American infrastructure. And Republicans believe in, like, the trickle-down economics. They spend a lot more money on tax cuts for the wealthy. They still give out tons of money. They increase defense spending by they want to increase it by $100 billion, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say every economist agree that Trump's policies would add like 3 times more debt than Kamala's would have. But I mean, I agree they both add debt, but I would disagree in terms of, like, debt. Like, federal debt is not the same as your personal debt. When we borrow money based off of our own money supply or based off of other currencies, as long as we get good return on investment in some sense for that deficit, I'm okay if we're investing in really fundamental things for the economy, which is why I don't like doing the cuts for or the deficits for tax cuts for the wealthy, because we have not seen that to benefit every person in America. Most of the money does stay at the top, and if we're gonna deficit spend, I'd rather deficit spend less and put it towards infrastructure rather than just hoping the wealthy make good decisions with it. So I mean, I don't mean to interrupt so much, but just going through these topics,
you didn't. I think it's it's hard because we can only speculate as to what would have happened should the election have gone a different way. So the proposed this sort of proposed spending seldom lines up with the actual spending. So we can only speculate from there. For all we know, you're right. You may be right, and the proposal from the Democratic Party could have led to less deficit spending, or could have gone drastically different once measures came in. Would you make the extreme case that Doge is doing nothing of value?
If you want to destroy like federal government programs and instead replace it with privatized options, so for example, Social Security, you'd rather people just put all that money in investments, which I think is really bad, to kill Social Security. If you want like Medicare and the VA and Medicaid to be privatized, then you will like what they're doing, because they are cutting government programs. They're cutting like the National Park Services, which is like 0.0004% of the budget, because they want to just privatize everything. It doesn't matter if it's a huge expense, a small expense. Why are they cutting the national parks? People like the national parks. They bring in more revenue than they cost. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it brings in more money than it actually costs to run. All these agencies that make 0 cents for cutting for budgetary purposes, they're still cutting it. So I would say that Doge, if you want to destroy like federal government, force everything to be privatized and everything else back to the states, then I'd say they are being very productive. But if you want the government to be more efficient and still continue their current functions, but in a more efficient manner, and to serve more people better and to do better money or to do better with our tax dollars, I hate it, because they're going to decrease taxes for the top 1% and they're going to increase taxes for everyone who's not in the top 1%. And I'm very against that. And also with like tariffs are a tax on the American people. And mostly working class people are going to take the brunt of these tariffs. And I don't know what Musk is doing. He's connected to the Communist Party of China. He's connected to Russia to some extent. He's connected to Hungary and Argentina. I don't know what he's doing with our data. If they have private servers downloaded or uploaded, if they made backends to our information, I don't know what they're doing with it. And data right now is digital gold. And scanning through it with AI and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, if you're anti-government in general, then you might be like, yeah, burn it all down. But if you really want like the government to continue sort of and be better, then I think it's definitely 100% a negative.
What I think is actually maybe underreported in the media is that effectively what Doge is doing is updating government systems. And so the abuse and fraud that's being identified as a result of improving the security and reliability of our government systems, which are very outdated. Now, we may have had attempts to look at government spending from a policy perspective, as well as from a voting perspective, by way of how our Congress votes on our spending. But what they're doing is they're updating very antiquated government systems. That's why it's primarily a team of engineers. And when
I'm sorry for saying this too, but like they're not doing that at all. They're not updating systems. There's no proof of that. But they have shut off, for example, they fired by accident the bird flu task force. They fired by accident every person that washes our nuclear stockpile, our weapons, our nuclear weapons. They fired all of them and then frantically tried hiring them back. They canceled Ebola funding randomly, which like all of this exceeds even the president's power typically to just go through and like cut out random programs that they feel like at any time. If they've done unconstitutional things, they're not just like an updating. Like, is there one example of them updating the tech of somewhere? Like I just haven't seen any proof.
Yeah, I mean
of that.
their core mandate, being literally the rebranded U.S. Digital Service Agency, is software modernization. Like that's their core initiative. Now, an example of this is what they're doing with the Social Security databases. They're not just like scanning through it and looking for fraud. In the process of doing so, they're trying to set up a proper payment system, which is something that is shocking to see that we don't have. That's literally their intended purpose. That's actually what they're fundamentally doing. When they identify fraud, in order to identify fraud, you need to build a system capable.
They
of
haven't identified fraud
itself.
or bad systems. Like I said before, Social Security is one of the best like insurance programs ever. And like they said that people that are 200 years old or 150 years old or 300 years old are getting Social Security. All of that is disproven because of the systems they use, like the numbers in there. Those are dates that are not filled in, but like there's not people getting like billions and billions of dollars in Social Security who are like not alive right now, or like who are fake, or like a massive level of fraud. That just is not like happening. And Republicans have been wanting to kill Social Security for literally 50 years. So I mean, if that was happening, they'd be screaming it from the rooftops. But they never had a propaganda force like this to say that. And you're saying they don't have a real payment system. This is probably going to be the first time in history where people miss their Social Security payments because of what they're doing, cutting all this staff. The average wait time, if you call the office right now, is like 90 minutes. And if you want a claim heard, it takes like 200 days now because they cut so many people. And all I'm saying is, if they were auditing these things, like they said for waste, fraud, and abuse, they're saying they're auditing, they'd be having forensic auditors look through line by line and seeing these different things. They would not have fired the investigators general that do this job already, that have these reports out already, because they're using the same reports sometimes. When they talk about the Pentagon, Trump talked about that. They're using some of the same reports, but I would just be wary. Because like you said, you don't, you might not have a huge knowledge base to be able to debate the specifics of these things. But it seems like, from my perspective as someone that does do a lot of this stuff, I have a master's in particularly public policy. So I know a lot of the ins and outs of this stuff. They're abusing people who don't understand the intricate aspects of what these systems actually do, and like how they're changing them. They're just saying, like, trust me, bro, like trust me, like trust us. We're smart. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna make it more efficient. There's huge fraud and waste and abuse, and they're gonna make a tweet about it. But I'll just be wary to not like trust exactly what they exactly what they say, especially when their big goal is to like delete Social Security and stuff like that.
It's interesting because I think that's all a matter of hearsay from both sides as to whether or not they're going to just cut Social Security. I don't think we've seen any proposals that that's actually going to happen.
They have made it very clear in their interviews. So, for example, the first one they're going to cut is Medicaid. They proposed $880 billion in cuts to the energy and commerce division, and that essentially means you need to cut Medicaid because their jurisdiction is mostly Medicaid when it comes to funding. So first they're going to cut Medicaid because only poor people get that. They want to slow walk the approach to extend to Medicare and Social Security. Not yet, but they're hoping to do that in like a couple budgets down the road once they get enough people to hate these systems, because they need to break the system first. Once they break these systems, people are going to have bad experiences with these systems, and then once they have bad experiences, they're going to ask for the systems to be destroyed eventually. And this is a common tactic used by conservatives in like the UK, for example, with the NHS, their health service. They intentionally defund it to say, hey, the system sucks, we need to privatize it. And that's their intended goal. But they made it very explicit what their plan is with like Social Security. And if you look up numerous interviews, or you look at their, 90% of what they've done so far is following Project 2025 to a T. I know they use that as a meme point. They don't know what it is, but they have been following that plan 90% of what it says. So I'd just like, if you want to go read that again and look at the 100-day plan for executive orders, I guarantee you're going to find a lot of similarities. And I'd be shocked if they diverted from the current path they're on. But definitely, look into those interviews and those plans as designed, and also like Republican efforts, in totality, trying to cut Social Security and Medicare. With the guise of waste, fraud, and abuse, they said there's waste, fraud, and abuse in all these agencies they need to cut out with no examples. So who knows? And I'll give you the final statement on this. We're on here for a while.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting thing. I think it'll be fun to see how this plays out. I'm a bit more optimistic that I think that there's going to be positive outcome from a result of DOGE. Now, whether that be at minimum from shining a spotlight on how federal tax dollars are being spent. So far, they've reported $55 billion in savings in 30 days. Even if you cut that and say it's only $8 to $10 billion, I think the idea, at least from the conservative argument, is that cutting federal spending to reduce the size of government will help people economically by being able to put us in a position to not have fraud and abuse, and I know your counterpoints to this, but to not have such a large deficit, to balance our budget, to reduce our taxes, to make the citizen power more powerful by having a smaller government. And then the burden of proof is on time to see. Now, we can say they're going to do this. This is not good cutting. This is bad cutting. But I think neither of us actually know whether these cuts will result in a positive outcome for American citizens. And we can only look at studies and examples of how it's been done historically. But I think it's a matter of optimism that this is going to be good for people. And I don't think we have enough evidence inside the last 30, 45 days to prove that they're not going to find fraud, that they're not going to improve government systems. Time will tell. And so I think it'll be interesting to revisit this and look at it with concrete data over a larger timetable.
Okay, I would just be wary of conflicts of interest. There's a reason we don't want regulatory capture by like big donors, and having the richest person of all time, do this is very conflicting. I'm pretty sure 13 of these departments they're cutting are directly investigating Elon's companies. So I'm against big money in politics. This is the most big money that's ever been directly in politics in human history, basically, in modern human history. And the final thing is, if you want to look up how Bill Clinton and Al Gore, okay, when they were in office, how they cut the federal staffing. Okay, they cut the federal government. They did it through Congress. There was rigorous debate. Okay, they did a bunch of different reviews of these reports, which we have these reports now. Reports now we could use. But just look up how Bill Clinton and Al Gore did it, because if you want an honest attempt at doing what Doge is saying they're doing, Bill Clinton and Al Gore did it. And they also ran the only surplus that we've had in like a very, very long time. So look up how they did it through Congress, and I promise you, well, we will see, like you said, but if you read how they did it, it's going to make a lot of sense in our government. It'll make a lot of sense when it comes to processes. It'll make a lot of sense because they do dissect things very carefully to make sure it still functions. But like, where can we reduce it in areas that it doesn't need to be as big as it is, I guess. But what they're doing right now is definitely in stark contrast to what that looks like. Usually like brutal executive force is not the best way to go about this. And I guess we'll see. Hope you stick around the channel. Thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it. And, for what it's worth, Vivek Ramaswamy agrees with you. Conservative who actually left Doge specifically to say that he didn't want to tackle it through digital approach, but wanted to tackle it through policy. So you may actually have more in common with some conservatives than you think.
Well, I think like the branding is different from what they're actually doing. So you might agree with like the branding of Doge, but like I said before, not have a knowledge base on what they're actually doing. And it's a lot of, but also like I'm sure they're for cutting these programs like Medicaid and Social Security, Medicare. I'm pretty sure Vivek is, because they want people to invest in like 401ks versus Social Security, which I think is a terrible idea. But that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, thanks again for the conversation.
Absolutely, take care.
All right, thank you too. See you. Yeah, dude. America is great. America, beautiful. Okay, guys, we're gonna do halftime real quick. I'm staying on longer than I intended because I don't feel good. Did anyone donate to my Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo yet? Wow, no one donated to my Cash App. No one donated to Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo yet. Oh yeah, you did. Thank you. I was just gonna say I'm gonna quit. I was gonna quit, but you saved me. Is it because you wanted to call in, or just because you wanted to help me? Thank you for the donation. I really appreciate that. That was just the donation. I don't know if it's anonymous or not, but initials PB. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was gonna say if no one donated to Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal, Jolah Politics, I was gonna quit tonight. I was gonna delete the channel. So you saved the entire channel right there. Okay, PayPal, nothing. This is when the comments go,
And look at him begging for money. And he's against money though, because he's a liberal. Look at him begging for money because he's a liberal, so he doesn't like money. He wants to do free work because he's a liberal.
Okay, I'm gonna do halftime real quick. If you want to call in, give me a minute. I'm gonna go get a snack and a drink, find a video to watch, real quick. I do halftime where I have 2 streams up, one YouTube Shorts stream and one YouTube horizontal stream. I mean, yeah, I do want to quit. I do want to quit, chat, because why would I want to keep on doing this when the government's threatening to jail you for opinions they don't like? Like, of course it's gonna be weird to be doing political stuff. Of course, like of course, dude. Like yeah, it's not a fun time. It's not a fun time, dude. I don't want to have random agents knocking at my door if I disagree with the government. Like, yeah, I don't like that. And they're gonna be like, oh, "You're being hyperbolic." I was like, "Yeah, dude. I'm not gonna be able to even see. I'm not even gonna be able to tell you that I told you so, because I'm gonna be in a cage somewhere." Wait. Okay, now everyone, I have a short stream and a horizontal stream running on my YouTube. Go to the horizontal for a few minutes, and I'll open up a new short stream for the second half. I'll redirect you to the horizontal stream. Thank you for watching. Drop a like, subscribe, thank you, all that kind of stuff. Go to the horizontal. See you there.